So good evening and Happy New Year. Tonight we're going to do the class in two sections. We're going to do numerology first, and then we're going to do astrology. So I'm going to stop at the end of the numerology section, make sure that everybody understands their number, their cycle, answer any questions related to the numerology, and then we'll move into the astrology. For both sections, you're going to need to write things down specifically in the astrology. So I really want you to walk away understanding what's going to happen to your sun sign this year. And obviously that's not the only part of your chart, but that's the part we're going to focus on. After we do a little theory, I'm trying to really keep the theory down and more practical. Then after we do everything, then I'll open for questions. And then if there's specific things that you're needing to know or looking for, I'll be happy to answer those. And of course, questions throughout the way, but that's the way I'm going to structure it tonight. So we're looking at your numerology, your personal numerology year number for this year, starting January 1st to December 31st, 2023. And I have delineated in the astrology section the major cycles for each sign for just the year. So we're focusing on this calendar year. So tonight I want to talk a little bit about the law of rhythm. And can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, Lisa's saying she can't hear me. The law of rhythm as the universal law that we're talking about tonight, you're going to walk away calculating your 2023 personal numerology. You're going to understand the concept of crosses in the chart and what cross you're on and the planets affecting your cross for the year. Okay. So the universal law that we're working with is the law of rhythm. Now, universal law is how the universe is structured, where when we talk about truth with a capital T, we're talking about a truth that is withstood through the test of time in any culture, in any gender, in any religion, just universal truths. All of the truths work together, but tonight I really want to focus on the law of rhythm. The law of rhythm explains that everything is cyclical, especially our spiritual growth and our life as we progress. And everything flows in and flows out. And this is going to be important, especially for the numerology. Are you in a year that you're flowing out or a year that you're flowing in? So we'll refer to that concept of going inward or external. The universal law of the law of rhythm talks about what you're sort of served tonight or today, this year, is related to things of the past. Nothing is piecemeal. Nothing is happening to you today without some seed or intention or thought or previous act being acted upon. So this law is really pertinent in releasing us of victimhood, understanding karma, and understanding that things that we planted early on, and again, even if it was just thoughts or left actions midpoint, later on there's a repercussion, either positive or negative, and we'll talk about both. Everything on our path is related to something previously started, whether we had awareness of it or not. So for each of the numbers that we're going to calculate, I'm going to talk about the goal of the year for that number, what to do, what stage of the life cycle to reflect upon, but also what shadow aspects. And I'm going to give you years past that are related to what you're sort of reaping now. So I'm going to sort of adapt both the astrology and the numerology as a spiritual path. They both are spiritual paths. There's a multitude of spiritual paths, but they all provide a cyclical path. They all provide the similar sort of steps along it. And the one I'm going to use today is the life cycle of a tree. So both numerology and astrology are two of many spiritual paths, and they follow a similar numerology and sacred geometry sequence. So it's very important, just like the life cycle of a plant or a flower or a tree exists, so does yours, from beginning to end with the same steps. The thing is, we go round and round in cycles. So we may, in a 90-year period, if we live that long, not understand how they're all related. But there are certain years that relate past, and we're just going to go back one so you could start to have an idea of what you're sort of in relationship to. So we're going to talk about the stages of the tree's life cycle in relationship to your personal number. And you'll be sent this after, so you don't have to write down all of the words, and it'll also be on the slide for your pertinent number. So in a 1 year, you prepare the land for what's to come. In a 2 year, you plant seeds. In the 3 year, there's germination. And in 4 year, we're talking about roots and really rooting in. These years are about external. They're really about pushing forward and producing and planting and externalizing goals. The 5th year is related to the stems. We're now separating from the roots and shooting upwards. And it's the connection year. We're going to see it related to growth. And then the internal years are 6, 7, 8, and 9. And now we're seeing what we thought about, acted upon, saved for, come to fruition in the 6, 7, 8, 9 years. And we close a cycle and we start it all over. And every cycle has a physical, a mental, an emotional, and a spiritual level. Nothing is independent. They're all interdependent. So some sacred geometry, so you can kind of see how we and our life over here is related to all of these other cycles and other spiritual paths and other tools. This is a Sri Yantra. This is the manifestation from Buddhist and Hindu philosophy of the universe, ourselves included as part of it. This is sacred geometry, the tree of life. Lisa, can you just take off the video until the questions? And the Kabbalah. This is the Enneagram that also follows the 9 that we're talking about. This is the astrology wheel, and there's crosses we're going to talk about in the second half. This is the medicine wheel and shamanism. This is the world tree, or the axis mundi, where you're the center and the world is the energetic force that surrounds the world. This is the life cycle of a tree, and this is us as the 5 elements, including spirit. So in any one of these traditions or spiritual paths, we see something repeated: circles, triangles, and squares. And symbolically, sacred geometry, in terms of our life, we too have circle years, triangle years, and square years. And I'll go through that in the numbers. And so no matter what path you follow, these truths are cyclical, and they form not only the human being in our personal life, which is in itself our life, our 80, 90 years on earth is a sacred geometry figure of its own, but it follows the cycle and the path of all other paths as well. So anything that we cover is in relationship to a spiritual path. Any questions about the format of cycle, the law, or understanding ourselves to be in the same pattern as that of nature and the universe? Okay. So Einstein said, God does not play dice with the universe. And this is basically related to chance. Chance doesn't exist. According to spiritual law, there is no such thing as luck or chance. There is a relationship with everything that happened previous that's linked to today. And so what he's speaking of is, in numbers, there isn't randomness. In the universe, there isn't randomness. There is a sequence. And part of our life's goal is to crack our own personal sequence. There is a universal sequence, and one of the reasons why I showed you those symbols with the squares and the circles and the triangles and the numbers as well. You, in your own way, are a manifestation of the divine and have your own sequence. And you're going to start connecting those dots, not only through the planetary cycles, but through the numerology as well. So the numerology that we're working with is Pythagorean numerology. There's several types of numerology, Chaldean, Kabbalistic. There's overlap, but that's the one I'm specifically using tonight. And it boils down to 9 numbers, numbers 1 through 9. All numbers have energy. There's an entire science of gematria where letters and numbers have energy. And when we put them together in our birth date, in our name, in our birth year, and all of that, that energy is what's pushed through us. There is a pattern in those numbers. You can trace your personal numbers back and find a pattern that will guide your soul's growth. Everything is guided for your ultimate soul's growth. So even though we'll talk a little bit about shadow aspects or quote unquote bad or hard years, it's all for the inner struggle to create self, the divine self, the highest version of self. There are some numbers that are earthly numbers. They're related to the body. That would be the square. Some numbers that are spiritual, that are soul numbers, that is circle. There's also mental numbers that are triangles, and I'll explain those. Some numbers are doing numbers, those early numbers of 1 to 4. 5 is more of a connected number. And then there are years that are being numbers, where you're kind of waiting to see what comes to fruition from what you've planted in years past. So you'll see which one you're in this year. The 2, 4, 5, 7, 8 numbers are more earthly. They're more about doing in the body, time management, food, health, things related to your body, purification of body linked to the mind. Your 3, 6 years are more mental. They're about changing perspectives, limiting beliefs, really looking at the thought processes that then will be reflected in the earthly years. And 1 and 9 are considered spiritual years because they're beginning and ending years. And they're about choosing your level of consciousness. And a lot of times during these years, they're hard, especially a 9 year, because something is taken, because a new level of consciousness, a new vibration is trying to be pushed through. The most auspicious numbers are considered to be 5 and 8. And all numbers are dual, like everything in spirituality. So we'll talk about not only of the light, but also of the shadow aspects. So does anybody have any questions? Can everyone still see the screen? Someone said that the screen isn't showing.
What makes 5 and 8 auspicious?
It's related to growth, both financial and spiritual. And you'll see that when I go through each number. So 5 is the connection. It's when we've sort of understood the roots or the shadow aspects or the lower consciousness, and we're now pushing through the soil, if you will, to start creating our tree and our fruit and showing the world who we are. How are we showing up in the world? Are we showing up with integrity, with our character, with higher consciousness? It tends to come with a lot of spiritual growth and financial growth. These tends to be what I call the fat cow years, related to the Joseph story in the Bible. So there tends to be gluttony and abundance. An 8 year is a power year. Oftentimes there has to do with a lot of financial growth and power. Of course, there are shadow sides to this as well, and we'll see that in a minute. Any other questions? Okay. So now take out your paper, and we're going to calculate your birthday number. Now, I'm going to say that oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes you're going to start seeing the energy start to shift around your birthday. So if you're a later birthday, July, August, September, things may be lingering from the 2022 number, which will be the one right before this one, until your birthday. This is energy. So it's not like on January 1st, the spirit world got a calendar and said, oh, shift, So we're moving into your number in 2023. If you're born early in the year, Capricorn, Aquarius, you're going to probably see the implementation of the energy shift quicker. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your birthday, mine is March 14th, and you're going to break it down into a number between 1 and 9. And what you would do is just add the day of your month and the day of your birthday and get that number. Everybody is going to have 7 for 2023. So take your birthday number plus 7 minus 15, and then break it down into a number between 1 and 9. So 1 plus 5 from 15. That's going to be your year number. So take a minute to do that and let me know if you have any questions before I continue.
I'm sorry, you said we're supposed to subtract 15 from the total of our birth date plus the current year?
No, no subtraction. So what's your birthday?
It's 625, so 13 plus 7 is 20.
Okay, so 6 plus 2 plus 5, and then plus 7 is what?
It equals 20.
20. Okay, so it's 2 plus 0 is a 2. You're in a 2 year.
Yeah, okay.
So Nicole, since you're in what, June, you
Yes.
might start seeing the shifts, and you're going to see the same thing with astrology. Some of these energies are going to start changing mid-year or early in the year. So start paying attention. When I go through the slides of each number, for instance, in your case, you're a 2, pay attention to 1 year things that might still be putting into place until the 2 fully kicks in. Monique, you're in a 2 year as well. Okay, Lisa, you are 4 plus 2 plus 6, and then this is a 7 year. So you are 4 plus 2 plus 6 plus 7. Add that up. Because your birthday is April 26th.
A question for me, Francis. I thought I did it right, but when you explained it, I think I did it wrong. This is Therese.
Okay, so give me a second. So Lisa, did you get a 10, a 1, a 19, I mean? 1
Yeah.
plus 9 is 10. You're in a 1 year, just like Josh. Okay, Therese, what's your birthday?
2960.
Okay, so 2 plus 9 is 11. That's 2 plus 7. You're in a 9 year.
Okay.
And Haley has 8. Okay, great. Anyone else? And this is the time to ask. So we're not gonna continue until everybody knows their year, so that you can. Is that Siobhan that you said that you're in a 2 year? Okay, what's your birthday? Oh, you're from New Zealand. I'm like 29. Okay. 10, 11, 12, 13. You're 4 plus 7.
Sorry,
You're in
it's
a
probably
2
easier.
year. Yes,
Okay,
you're in a 2
thank
year.
you.
Okay, no problem.
Can I
So you're
verify-
basically taking your birthday. So again, mine is March 3, 14. You get your number every year. This is the same sequence. The only difference is next year in 2024 will be an 8. So you'll always take your birthday and birth month and birthday plus the 4 year that we're in. And that's the only thing that'll change. You're going to follow the sequence one by one by one.
I have a question.
Yes.
So it's actually a 2-part. I'm June 17th. I came up with that. I'm a 3 year. I only asked because I struggled with that so hard last year. I had to have a personal phone call. So I'm June
Yes,
17th.
because what happened was we were doing Enneagram, and we were doing a birthday number and an Enneagram number, and they were not the same.
And my head
I
exploded.
thought of you when I was writing this. I was like, oh, I'm like, I have to clarify that to her. It was probably the teacher's fault, so.
No. So I wanted to make sure I'm a 3 year. And then if you could, we had like a little technical blip, and we missed the part about the energy of the year changing on what birthdays, like what months. you said like if you're I think July, August, or June, July, August, that you're already shifting into the next year. Is that?
Oh, okay. So let's understand energy and spirituality. There is no time. There's none of that, right? So it's not like the spirit world says, oh, 2023, let's flip the calendar and all up on that day, everyone now is in their new number, right? The number is the energy slowly lingering to change in your life. So I have noticed with clients that around the birthday or a couple months before, the energy starts to shift. So like I said, if you happen to be a Capricorn or Aquarius early on in the year, you might start feeling that right away, right? The change. But if you're not until June, July, August, you may not feel it until March or April start to move. So when I go into the numbers, make sure you make note of the last year because you might be finishing stuff out from the previous.
Cool.
Okay. And
then was I correct on 3?
so you're 617. Is that your birthday? June
Yes, ma'am.
17th?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so 5 plus 6 is 11. That's a 2-year.
It's June is a 6. 6 plus 1, 7.
Right,
Said-
14. 4 plus 1 is 5. And then 5 plus 6, 5 plus 7, I'm sorry, is 12. You're right, a 3. You're in a 3.
Thank you so
What
much.
is it with us in the numbers, right? And then Rosie is 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. You're a 4 plus 7, you're 11, you're in a 2-year. In this
Thank you.
particular class, we're not looking at master numbers like 11 and 22, but just so you know, in numerology, master numbers are 11 and 22. So being an 11, even though you take it down to a 2, you're still in the energy of an 11, which is really great. So if your 2 ended up to be an 11, when you calculated it, that's just a little extra plus. Any questions? Okay, so everybody has their number. Okay. So the last time that you were this number was 9 years ago. So every single person was this number back in 2014. So you may not remember right now, but as the days go on, I want you to start thinking about, related to the theme when we go in the number slides, what you were doing, what was happening, what you were thinking about, what were you changing, what were you working on during that year. This is now related. Okay, so again, what I said, what you did in the past is what you're getting now. So the number one rule in spirituality is no victimhood. We are not victims. All of the reason that we learn everything we learn is to get ourselves out of victimhood. So if we can start relating to what we were working on or failed to follow through on, or maybe perhaps showed up low consciousness to this year, now we have an idea of what the theme is for the year. In a minute on each slide, I'm going to add an extra year for you to connect the dots with. But right now, everybody start to kind of think about 2014 and a rundown of perhaps big themes in your life at that time, because they're going to resurface this year. So everything is cyclical. And the reason it is cyclical is so that you have a chance over and over and over again to show up high consciousness, high vibration, with integrity, with character, at the highest self. Okay, so that's the pattern that we're seeking. So if you are a 1 to 4 year, 1, 2, 3, 4, you are in a doing year. Your ebb is outward. Okay, this is a time, remember the life cycle of the plant. I'll refer back to that in a minute. You're pushing through the roots, you're planting seeds, you're prepping the land, you're in a doing active role. If you are in a 5 to 8 year, you are in a being year. It can be internal like 7, and we'll get to that in a minute. 7 is the most internalized year, but the 5 year is you're sitting back and kind of enjoying the fruits of your labor, right? There can be some gluttony and there can be some, over expenditure and feeling very robust and Santa Claus rich feeling, but you're also kind of looking back and saying, hey, I've worked really hard to get to this growth and you're enjoying it. 8 years are also similar in the way that you're kind of reaping what you sowed in the previous years. So they're more about sitting back and being and allowing things to show up as you did the work already. 9 years are completion and balance years. 9 years tend to be the hardest years, 7 years the second hardest. 9 years are endings. So my boys just graduated last year, and they were 9s. So that was a positive ending. But there's also leaving friends and leaving a home and leaving a community and all the things too. So in 9 years are considered hardest because something is taken from you. You weren't maybe ready to let it go, but it will end. So a lot of times those years are hard years for people. And 1 years, because they're right after, can start off rocky because you're prepping for the new stage, but you're somewhat excited because now you're kind of getting out of the funk if you were in a dark space, that you're ready for the next cycle to begin. 7 years are the second hardest years because they're internal. 7 years a year to do all the inner work. 1 and 9 years are circles. Circles are related to our soul and our spirit. 3 and 6 years are triangle years. They're related to changing our thoughts, raising awareness around our limiting beliefs, changing our perspective, raising our consciousness. And 2, 5, 6, 7, and 8 years are square years. They're putting things into practice, whether it's the body, whether it's our calendar, whether it's what we do in terms of our health and our financial standing and our time management and whatnot. Can anyone tell me why there are 6 square years and less of the other 2? Anyone want to guess?
Life is a lot of work and we've got to put things into practice.
Haley, life is a lot of work, and the square is related to work, but the square is related to anything that dies. So if you have the concept in your mind, you can't take it with you, your body, your bank account, that's the stuff you're working on, because that's the stuff of behavior. That's the stuff that's going to show the world how you live, how you show up in the world, what your character is, how you're going to be defined. The other reason that there are 6 Earth years is it's related to animal consciousness, low-level consciousness, the roots of the tree. And anyone who's worked with me knows that I say the word low-level consciousness and animal consciousness 1,000 times a minute, okay? 90% of any spiritual path is related to low-level consciousness, poor choices, the roots of the tree, which is our darkness and our shadow. So those years are about chipping away, to use Michelangelo's example of the David, what you are not. And so our body is the earth element. It's the most densest element. So it's not about your bank account. It's about how you spend your values or what your values are. It's not about your calendar. It's about how you spend the element of air, your time. And that's how you craft a life. So that's why you'll see repeatedly the square, and when in astrology, we're going to call them the crosses, over and over and over again. 90% of the zodiac is animals, because it's our animal consciousness that we're trying to chip away at, that we're trying to grow from. Okay, any questions on that?
I have a question. So 1 and 9 are the circle years. Is that correct? Just the 1 and the 9?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Let me clarify. Your spirit or your soul comes with something that it's going to birth, okay? It's going to come out no matter what. It can come out small, it can come out large. You're going to decide how much you want to develop it. But your soul's purpose, so to speak, what we call teleos in depth psychology, is going to be birthed from you. The years that were propelled more are the 1 years and the 9 years. The 9 years, because something that was getting in our way, the universe helps us take something away so that you could propel forward. The 1 year, think of closing the circle, or the concept of Uranus, the snake eating its tail. You come full circle with a cycle. The 1 year is the concept of, I have to prep the land for the next next sort of cycle of this. But the spirit always has to work through the body. Okay, so the body is obviously where this is coming through, but those are years that we get extra nudges to end things and start things. That is part of our soul's growth. That's why they're circle. Any other questions? Okay. So Pythagoras said, numbers are the cause of gods and demons. I'll say it again. We are not victims. Nothing is happening because we did not participate in its creation. And so if we follow our numbers and we look at the cycles, those years that we consider really gluttonous or auspicious years, like 5 and 8 years, we might say, wow, God, what blessings, right? Those are the years of giving grace and toasting and to all the goodness. And then the dark years we might call like, oh my God, I've been cursed, or this is such a year that I confronted my demons. We use these words in our language, and they're related in a pattern of the numbers that we're confronted with. Okay, yeah, everyone mute. I guess someone's not muted. So now I'm going to go through each of the numbers. So if you are any of the numbers and you have questions, you ask your question and everyone will have the same chance. So I'm going to start with the 1 year. So the 1 year is about unity, again, the word of circle, wholeness and beginnings. So imagine that you're intact, whatever you had to let go of the previous year in a 9, now you start fresh. Your land is fresh and now you can plant whatever you want on it. You are whole. You have this opportunity to take all of your resources up until now and do something with it. It's like a restart year. It's related to the magician card. Here's the magician card in the tarot. The tarot itself is another sequence of a spiritual path. And I'm only going to use obviously the first 9 of the major arcana to show you the theme. One of the things that you can do if you have a tarot deck, and if you don't, it doesn't matter, you can print off a card from the internet in any number of decks, is download the picture, keep it on your phone, meditate with it under your pillow, kind of connect with the archetypal imagery of the tarot card. That's one way to connect to the energy of the year. So I just wanted to kind of give you a visual. Now, if you were a 1 year, besides 2014 that I said everybody's related to, you're going to layer on what happened in 2020. So you're going to start to find the theme, and everybody is going to have that. 2023, 2014, and what the slide says. The message with this year is to start something. The concept of the magician, or the number 1, is you have all of the elements: air, earth, fire, and water, all of them. The question is, what proportion are you going to use them in, and what are you going to use them towards? So you have all of the elements in the universe at your disposal. So everything in alchemy, everything in spirituality is all about the proper use of your elements. Your makeup of your life represents what you value. And so the way that you balance those elements is very important this year to build a life for the upcoming 9 years. The shadow aspect of this year is to connect with anger. Anger is a very strong creative force that can push you forward, but connecting in terms of your anger as a shadow aspect is the call to action for the shadow work in 1 year. And this is when you prepare your land. Who is a 1? Anyone that's a 1, do you have a question? about what's upcoming, what you're ending, what you're beginning. No? Okay. If you think of others later, I'll get back to that. The 2-year. A 2-year, the concept of the two, and I think there's many twos here. And we'll talk about duality in a minute, but duality, a focus on relationships, a focus on harmony, integrating opposites, this is the key factor, and using your intuition more so than your instinct and your intellect. It's related to the High Priestess card. You'll see the moon here, and these are pomegranates. Pomegranates have to do with intuition and the underworld, and obviously the seeds, which is the step in the spiritual cycle. The message here to understand, and this is so, so important on anybody's spiritual path, is everything is dual. Find the opposite of whatever you are working on, whatever you're neglecting, whatever you're judging, and fill in the blanks. We get very single perspective, right? Work matters, families neglected, right? I'm going to be selfish this year. I neglect my personal relationships. This is a year to look at both sides. Anytime that you are clear that you know something, turn that around and find the opposite, because that also is true. And this year is about integrating those. And pride is the shadow, because pride is that concept of not only the selfishness that the world revolves around me, but it's more about I know truth. I know my way is right. And so that's why it's so related to relationships. And sort of mundane numerology, you'll hear like relationships and love, and you'll meet your partner in a 2-year, and all that is true. But it's more about understanding if it's the male to the female or the light to the dark. That's what the harmony concept is about. The seeds that you plant here related to 2015, and then also 2014 related to the 9-year cycle. Any 2 questions? Okay, this is a very, very good year to really listen to your intuition.
So the 2-year is about really using relationships as a mirror. Is that what
Absolutely.
I'm hearing? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. So we get very in the I, this is more about a we. And if there's a particular area of your life that you're sure you're certain of, flip that around. The opposite is true. And if there is a particular situation that keeps arising for you to kind of look at that shadow aspect or the opposite of it. So this is really about the opposites, what Jung calls the tension of the opposites. Claudia, you have a question?
Hi, Francis.
Hi.
Hi. I was driving and my signal was pretty bad. I just arrived, so I'm good to go. Yeah, with my notebook and everything ready. But I know I'm gonna later on review what you talked so far, because, like I said, my signal was really bad. But
Okay, don't
just
worry
real
about it.
quick,
Go ahead.
just real quick, let me know if there's any number that I need to be aware of just to follow through. I know
What's
my
your birthday?
10/28/1972.
So 7, you're a 9-year. So we haven't gotten there yet. Yeah. And everyone's going to get the recording. And if something comes up after, like I always say to you guys, you can always email me, and you guys know I respond.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Not a problem. Okay. Any other questions about the 2-year?
Yes, I wanted to just kind of get like a little example when you say that if you're certain about something in your life, flip it on the other side. Like, for example, if I'm certain about what I'm going to do education wise, give me an example so I understand that a little better.
So give me a certainty in your life.
That I'm presently living in Jamaica. I'm certain about that.
Okay, but you have told me I don't want to live in Jamaica, right? So I don't want to be in Jamaica. Okay, well, maybe there's truth to living in Jamaica.
Right.
Consider
Got
the
it.
opposite. The
Got it.
opposite being true. And it's really funny because what happens when we fall in love? What happens all of a sudden? Everything we said we would never do, we do, right? And that's one of the harmonies, if you will, of relationship. These absolutes, this is about not being attached to absolutes. This is about understanding that there is another side to every story. So in astrology, we have the axes, right? The 1-7, the 2-8, the 3-9. That's to show both sides. So the invitation in a 2-year is to look at the other side of the coin and see what you might be missing. There might be some information there that you can integrate. Doesn't mean that you have to take it all, because that would be 0 to 100, but there's some truth on the other side of the coin. And Nicole asked about this deck. This is actually the Prism deck. I'll show you the box. It's lovely. And you can use any deck. If you're going to do the meditation on your card for your number, archetypal, these are archetypal images. No matter what deck you use, they'll start to sort of simulate and stimulate the energy. You can do that in dream. You can do that in meditation or whatnot. And I think there's another question. Okay, I don't know what that is. Okay. 3. So the 3 is related. It's our first mental year. Okay. Are you guys familiar with the quote from Tesla? If you knew the power of 3 or the magic of 369, you'd have the keys to the universe. That quote is related to the 369, whether it's the Enneagram, that's a triangle, whether it's in astrology that's called trines, whether it's the 369 in numerology. The numbers of 369 are patterns that stimulate and invite us to raise our consciousness. Every single thing in our body, all of those earth years, so the squares, are related to what we think. Our thoughts create the world. Our thoughts create the universe that we see, that we live in, our perspective. So it's the first invitation to rethink your thoughts. And it is about mental processes, setting intentions. This is an intention year. So if anyone has worked with me, we talk a lot about belief change, not behavior change. So this is the first step in changing your beliefs. In spirituality, if you think something, it's done. It has set energy into motion. It does not matter if you've acted on it. That is the power of 3. And you will see in 6 the result of that thought, even if you did nothing. So that's the power of our thoughts. And this is the first step in changing our thoughts, in upgrading our thoughts, in transmuting consciousness. It's related to the Empress card. And notice here, this is wheat. Wheat is, and she has like a crown here of stars that's like heaven and earth. This is considered the commoner grain, and what like the bread, the daily bread, getting all of our needs met, if you will. And the crown of stars represents obviously the canopy of the universe. So we're here between heaven and earth. And every single thing we think creates the world we live in. And it's related to the year 2020. So go to 2020, again, 2014, and then this year in 23, and start to find the thought perhaps that you put into action, into motion, even if you didn't do anything, an intention you might have said at a full moon ceremony. These things start to create momentum. The message is to change your thoughts, upgrade your thoughts. Now, you cannot eliminate limiting beliefs, okay? So understanding that you don't think you're enough, that you're worthless, those things stay. This is an attempt to change or add on. Okay, I feel worthless, but I still deserve a great relationship, or I still deserve to have or want to have a healthy body, or a pretty nice bank account. Okay, so this is counteracting the low thoughts of our low consciousness that we're not enough. And everyone thinks that, and that never goes away. But this is the beginning of getting out of the thoughts that are creating your limited world. So what's initiated now will come to harvest in a 6-year. So this is a very important year. Does anyone have this? 3-year? No?
I do.
You do? Okay. Oh, Suzanne, great. This is so good for you too, right? And the shadow is self-deceit. How great is that? How on point? So
Yeah.
self-deceit is obviously lying to ourselves and not wanting to see the full picture and not removing all the veils. So it's a real year of accountability and really being honest, getting down and dirty. It's a very powerful year, the 3-year. The step in the cycle is germination. This is when the growth begins. So that seed starts to, like, you know, push something forward. So you're starting a cycle here of new thoughts. If you don't follow them through and you don't act on something, well, it's going to die, but you will have some result in the 6-year if you follow through. And the 6-year is sort of one of those being years. 4 years. Anybody in a 4-year? No? Okay. A 4-year is considered one of the hardest years, like the 7-year. This is a year of a lot of work. So you're building, sometimes you're literally building a house, or you're building a business, or you're building a baby inside it, right? It could be, because it's an outward year, you can actually be building something materially in your life, but it's also related to building inner construction. When we talk about Saturn, for those of you who have Saturn coming up, you're going to want to pay attention to this, because this is relevant to Saturn. These are what I call, if you know my language, the skinny cow years. Things feel limited, things feel restricted, things feel tight, and it's all for growth. We're like pushing through. It's related to the roots. This is a year to really go into the roots. So you could do ancestral trauma work, you can do family constellations work, you can look at your own, my mother, father, child, triad work, shadow stuff, things to really understand the roots of who you are, because from those roots you build everything. You cannot uproot, okay? The physical world and what must die. Anything to do with a 4-year, or the number 4 is a square in spirituality, and that's what you don't take with you and dies. However, this year is related to an 8-year. Whatever you do in a 4-year comes to fruition in an 8-year, and you sit back and reap the benefits. And whether you like it or not, this is going to happen to you. This is considered the cross that we bear, a 4-year. The cross that you bear will show up whether you like it or not. You don't really have a choice. It's going to happen. So you're going to feel restricted or limited somewhere. And then in the 8-year, you're going to start seeing the growth from that restriction. The shadow is envy. Perhaps you're looking at something that you want and you can't grasp, or something that someone else has. This isn't the year to get those things. The fruits come later. 5-year. Okay. The number 5, I should have put the number 5 here, but the number 5 has like a little curve, right? The 5. Anything in spirituality that has a curvature is related to spiritual growth. So whether it's the Fibonacci spiral, whether it's the number 5, whether it's like in nature, the curvature of the flower, like here, is related to a 5 or spiritual growth ascension. So this is a year where you're starting to grow into the work that you've done in the past 4 years. Because it's related to the stem, it's connecting low consciousness is high consciousness. It's sort of like saying, I've owned that part of me. And now from there, even though I feel worthless, even though I feel that I come from low consciousness and I don't like my roots, I'm going to own those. And from there, I'm going to burst through the dirt, and I'm still going to create a life for myself. So this is a year of a lot of growth and fun. It's also a very fun year. This is a great year to have a child. This is a message in spirituality. The 5-year and the 6-year work together. Everything works together. The 4-year and the 5-year work together. What you save for in the 4-year comes back in the 5th year. Okay. But the message of this year, because it's so gluttonous, it's so joyful, it literally is like Santa Claus, is to save for a rainy day. Because what you kind of work on during a 5-year, you'll later on get exponentially in growth the next go around. It's also related to an 8-year. So these years of abundance and growth are really to not just give in, it's to save something for a rainy day. This is true self-mastery. The Hierophant or the high priest is someone who has really begun to master themselves. And if you're in doubt what the self-mastery is, you've mastered your animal consciousness and your low-level consciousness. That's always the answer. Low-level consciousness and balance are always the answers in spirituality. And the shadow is greed. So imagine if you have this avarice, a lot of growth, a lot of money, or having abundance, you can get somewhat greedy. And it's related to 2014. So this is the year that's related back to your last 9-year cycle. And there you just see it, it's full circle. It's anything with curvature is related to the last cycle. You'll see that in the Jupiter planet as well. They all have this little loop, and anything to have a loop has to do with growth. I chose this image intentionally, which is a spiral staircase. So anything that has this form related to spirituality is not only related to this law, but is related to your next level of growth. Any questions so far before we go into the now being years?
Francis, I have a question about the 5-year. When you say save for a rainy day, are you meaning literally or figuratively saving financially or your resources?
It could be. The reason I say that, and I'm sure I've shared this story with you before, and most of you have heard me share the story of Joseph, the one from the Technicolor Dreamcoat, where the Pharaoh has the dream of the fat cows eating the skinny cows eating the fat cows. This is a fat cow year, right? It's an abundance year. But the teaching of that myth, the teaching of that story is when the Pharaoh goes to Joseph to interpret the dream, Joseph says, you're going to have 7 years of bumper crops, a lot of growth, and 7 years of famine. And if we save during our feasting years, the famine won't be so bad. And Egypt didn't feel it. So after this, you're going to get a 9-year. And so you're going to start it all over again. And so you're saving, whether it's financially, whether it's your energy, whether you're learning to do more discernment, spiritually, we don't tend to work on our spirit when things are great. We just don't think about it. When are we taken to our knees? When things are bad. So this is a time to remember your spiritual reverence, your spiritual practices, all of your discernment, everything that you've been working on with your thoughts, your shadow work, all of that during a year, because it's a good year. You still have to remember to save. That's what I mean by that. But it could be literally as well, saving money as well. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So I see 2 people raise their hand. I'm not super tech savvy, so you can just speak because I don't know who it is.
Francis, it's Lisa.
Hi.
Hi. So last year would have been a 9-year for me. And I even remember you telling me this in a session about that it was my 9-year, and it was a year where I'm finishing things up. So I started teaching again, right, last year. So that means that that's probably like an ending of the teaching in that respect, right?
Yeah, and in one of your sessions, what did we say? We said after you finish out the year, and it's probably related to the 1 year starting around your birthday, April, May, when the school year ends.
Oh, right. Okay, thank you.
And there was someone else that had a question? No? Okay. So now we're entering the being years. So because I like to talk philosophy, and I promised I would talk less philosophy, but I just have to interject this in a minute. In the Vedas, in the Hindu texts, there are 3 energies that are constantly in flow, and you might have heard them: tamas, rajas, and sattva. Tamas is more of like a heaviness or a low level consciousness. Rajas is more of the action, the fire, and Sattva sort of like the purity and balance. The number years follow a similar trajectory. So these first numbers were very Rajasic numbers and Tamasic. You're supposed to get out there and do, and perhaps be a little aggressive and realize that you have anger and realize that you have a low consciousness and realize that maybe you overreacted. That's the function of those years. So that now in these years coming, you can sit back and not only realize perhaps shifts that need to be done and growing consciousness around them, but also to sit back and realize when you made choices that were authentic or high consciousness choices, identifying how you showed up, you're also reaping your benefits. So a lot of people are like, oh, I have no energy, I don't want to do anything, or you know, that's part of the cycle. We're not supposed to be. These are called process wins. These are wins that are internal. You may not have an outcome in your hand. The earlier years are more about outcome based. I have money, I have a relationship, I have a house, I have a job. You're going to perhaps see them. But these years are more of the being process wins. So the wins are internal, they're spiritual. So this is the cycle. Okay. So a 6 year. A 6 year is related to service, health, the body, physical changes. The key thing in a 6 years, small steps, bite-sized pieces. And it's so, so important in this year to decide your choice consciously. Conscious choice making is crucial. I told you this was related to a 3 year. So here it is, 2020. And now you're starting to get the benefits of what you initiated in a 3 year. The key here is small. This is really the year of behavior change. And those are small and steady, consistent. They're not these large swoops like in a 5 year. These are really about small changes that are long lasting. Okay, bye, Monique. And if anyone needs to leave at any point, you can just leave because you're going to get the recording after. And if you need to ask me questions after, you can email. So you're going to do small steps. You're going to conserve energy. This is a good savings year. This is a good year to maybe invest a little, go to the gym, but 20 minutes a day, small. They add up, they add up, they add up. Because going back to that Tesla quote, 369, if you put out action rajas in a 3 year and you have some sattva in a 9 year, more balance and purity and like, again, purity of the body, if you're exercising and eating well and making these behavior changes in a 9 year, the completion is balance, mind, body, spirit, balance. That's the triangle. So those are the mental years and the mind is everything. And all of a sudden, the spirit, the mind, and the body are all flowing together. So 6 years are really important for that. This is the seedling. Something is growing, but it's still small. It's still small. The key word is small consistency. Anybody a 6 here?
Hey,
Yes,
Francis,
somebody.
it's Lori.
Lori was a 6, right? Okay.
Yep.
The
Luna
card
and
is
Jake-
the lovers. The
Raise
card
your
is the
hand, do
lovers.
whatever. Oh,
What was that?
I'm a 6 year too.
Oh, you are, Angelica? Okay. So the card is the lovers, and it's not necessarily related to love. What it is it's a dance, as you can see in the card, with your choices. This is a year of choices where choices matter. Are you going to choose high consciousness or low consciousness? Are you going to choose to go to the gym or sit on the couch? Are you going to choose to eat the cookie or eat the apple? The choices here determine in the 9 year what is taken from you or what you're now starting again in the 1 year, the following. So a 6 year seems very boring. If you think of the 6th house in astrology, it's kind of boring. It's day to day, it's the mundane. This is a very crucial year, and choices and small changes are the words. So this is a great year to implement your breath. Breathe. Is this the best choice? Breathe. Do I have to say this? Breathe. Is this necessary to do? Breathe. Do I have to call a friend buddy to go take a walk with you? Adriana, I'm in a 6 year, so I'll be calling you a lot for walking buddy. The shadow is fear. Okay, so fear of what you won't do, what you have done. Remember, it's a movement year, right? You're trying to get off the couch and out of the house and make good choices. There's fear with making good choices. It sounds ironic, but it is, because it's change. And so it's the status quo, really fighting the will here. So in the 3 year was the intention of the thought. This is put your money where your mouth is. Show up for yourself. And it's in small changes. Anyone who's in a 6 year, I highly, highly recommend a book called Atomic Habits. It was the best-selling book 2 years in a row for behavior change. But for 6 year people, it's phenomenal.
Wait, was it Atomic Habits?
Atomic Habits. Sarah Lynn, are you a 6 also?
Yeah, me
Oh,
and
great. We'll be
Jamie,
building your values house. This is really values.
and Jamie too.
Okay. Oh, both of you. Oh, okay. So we got a bunch of us. We're gonna have a 6-party club.
Francis, it's Lori again. Your phrasing was interesting, that if you make a certain choice during a 6 year, choose carefully, because in the 9th year, something can be taken from you. Can you
Right,
give
if
me?
you don't do it yourself. Remember, the 1 and the 9 are circle years. The universe
Right.
is going to push what needs to be birthed from you out.
Okay,
There's
so
no
give an
asking. This is a
example of
choice
what
year.
that. Okay, give an example of what that could look like.
Perhaps you need to make changes for your diet. Let's just say lose weight, blood pressure, exercise. In a 9 year, perhaps you have to quit your job because you're getting treatment for something severe, or you have a immune disorder and your diet has to change forced.
Okay, got it.
And all illness is emotional and mental. And these are mental processes, the 3, 6, 9, because they're triangle.
Right.
So just go to the
Okay.
mind. What thought has to change? What thought has to change? And anyone who's ever met me knows my saying, behavior change doesn't matter, belief does. This is the year where belief change and behavior change go hand in hand. This is a show up year. And it's consistency, consistency, consistency. That's why I recommend that book. Okay. Right. 7. So 7 year is one of the hardest years. It is literally the skinny cow year in that story of the Bible of Joseph. It is the skinny cows are now eating the fat cows. So whatever growth you feel you had, it doesn't mean it went away, is now swallowed by the skinny cow. Restriction, limitation, going inward. There could be a melancholy or depression that can come with that. It could be that you're just like, oh my God, I have to focus and be home because you have a problem at home that you have to work on. It doesn't allow you to really expand outside the home. Okay. So it's very inward. This is a year, a winter year. This is a year to go inward. This is a year to focus on your growth, to really do the inner work, inner child work, shadow work, all great in a 7 year. This is the Chariot card. The Chariot card you see here, it's like a car. In the more antiquated decks, if you will, like the more traditional tarot decks, you see a man who seems to be like coming back from war, and he has no steering wheel. It's his inner power that is guiding the drive. He is being guided completely from his inner strength. So everything you work on internally this year will then lead you back home to yourself. So it's a card or a year that's all about inward. Everything must lead back to you, inward, inward, inward. The shadow is gluttony, and the leaves are the spiritual or the cycle of the tree. So we're starting to produce food. Now, this is a metaphor. The metaphor is inner food. It's the real food of the soul. Think of the chrysalis. When the caterpillar goes into the chrysalis, it goes empty with nothing. It subsists and then it comes out the butterfly. This is your chrysalis year. So it's all about your inner food, your inner strength, your inner everything. This is not a year for anyone to meet your needs. This is not a year to look external. It's all in you. This is related to the 1 year because you were given all of the elements and how did you prep your land? So you start to see how they're related. And there is a sequence. There is a numerological sequence, and the 1 and the 7 are related. 8 year, Haley, any other 8s? No? Okay. 8 year. So after you struggled in the 7 year and you got out of your cocoon, or you cracked through the chicky egg with your nose, and now you're the chickadee, and now you're the butterfly, you get an 8 year. It's a year of power, mainly inner power, but it can be an increase in position at work or whatnot. It's something more visible, so that power can be more visible as your role in a position or in a club or something. Oftentimes related to money. It's a year of humility because you understood the inner struggle in the 7th. Even though you might be in a leadership position, or you might have, gotten a raise or whatnot, there's a level of humility, or we hope, because you went through what you just went through. And it's really about utilizing your inner strength as power more so than your external, but they could be balanced. You can now be in a powerful role because you own the inner power, like that chariot. Yes, give me a second, I'll do that. The shadow is lust, and the message is to gain strength, power, and abundance, but to stay humble. So now we're talking about maturity and the flowers. This is related to a 4 year. Okay, so that restriction and constriction of the skinny cows in a 4, all the hard work, whether you built a home, a family, a baby, a business, whatever you built, now you see the fruits of that in an 8 year. Think of the symbol of an infinity, the lemniscat. That symbol is an 8 year. So it keeps going and going and going and going. So what you do in 4 years comes here in an 8 year. And it's something that keeps on going. So Sony, the 7 card was the chariot. So I was saying that in more traditional decks, you see a man almost like he's coming back from war, and he's very solid about his place in the universe. Everything's very much in alignment. And it's with his inner strength that he's driving the chariot home. All roads lead inward, all roads lead home. In a 1 year, you had all the elements. It was the time to prep your land. How are you going to use your elements wisely? It's the beginning of any alchemical process. This year is related to that. Any other questions about 7 or 8?
Thank you.
No? Okay, 9. So the 9 year is a completion year. It is the hardest year, even more so than 4 and 7, because it's an inner year and it's a year where you can't do anything about it. There is a loss. There is a closure, whether you wanted it or not. Sometimes you initiate the closure, you quit your job, right? You resign, you've been there 30 years and it's an ending, but you still go through a process of detachment. And it definitely is letting go of something. You have to let go of something, or something will be taken in a 9 year. It's all to make room for your next cycle, your next growth, that next seed that's going to be planted. So something has to be removed in order for something new to grow. That's why Buddha says attachment is the root of all suffering. Now, attachment is the root of all suffering is not about how big your house is and how big your bank account is and giving away all your money and how fancy your car is. The root of all suffering is attachment. It's a 9 year. It's related to thoughts. The attachment we have is to thoughts. It's not to things or people. It's to thoughts. So we oftentimes have to lose something in the material world so our perspective shifts, so our perspective changes. So we might see something a little different. So we might see a mirror. So we might say, oh, that person had a perspective I never thought of. So 3, 6, 9 years are thought years. So it's very, very important because a lot of times people think by giving away or living minimally that they're not attached. We are attached to thoughts, which are then linked to emotions. And that is what the universe responds to. The universe does not respond to things that you can't take with you. Okay, so keep that in mind. And the step is the pollination and getting ready for the new plants and the new seeds. It's related to the sloth. Remember, we're coming to the Raja Sattva balance here. So sometimes because we're kind of, in a lull or something painful is happening, we may feel that we're being spiritually lazy. Sloth has to do with spiritual sloth. Our faith could be tested in a 9-year very, very strongly, and that could obviously cause a spiritual sloth if you don't have your reverence to your practice or what. Any questions about anything related to the year, your numerology, anything before we enter astrology? I want to make sure everyone understands the numbers. How does the Hermit card relate to a 9-year? Oh, a Hermit card is about self-mastery. So you see him here, he's on a bridge. In every Hermit card, he is moving past one cycle. Sometimes it's a column, sometimes it's a tree, and he's moving into something else. Very important, this symbolism here with the bridge. You don't look back. This is a year where you don't look back. What ended, ended. You do not look back. So if something ended in the 9-year, let's say a relationship, and the person comes back and you're thinking, the answer is no. Not in a 9-year. Do not look back. That's the symbolism of the bridge.
I have a question.
And you guys are moving. So he's letting go of whatever he's got to go. That's Nicole. Yes, who has a question?
Could you do the correlation between 3 and 6? What's interesting, my roommate's here and she's a 6 and I'm a 3. And you mentioned the connection of 3 and 6 a couple of times.
Sure. So remember that there are square years, circle years, and triangle years. Okay. All sacred geometry starts with a circle, leads into a triangle, and leads into a square. And I'm saying this again because it's going to be relevant to the astrology. So I really want to make sure you get this. So these are all forms, including ourselves as humans, of sacred geometry. Our life represents a sacred geometry, right? So the 3, 6, and 9 represents the triangles. So I'll just show you here. In the chart, we're going to look at triangles. You see them here. You see our forms create triangles in the medicine wheel here. Triangles are always related to thought. Why? The circle is the universe intact. The first thing that creates any universe on any spiritual path is that the creator, whatever you believe in, wanted to experience itself. It created a triangle. Anytime you want to create something in your life, you create a triangle. In a 3-year, it's the intention. In the 6-year, it's the practice, the actual work that you're doing to honor the intention of the thought. And at the 9-year, you see the completion of the intention of the thought and following through on the thought. That makes the total triangle. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Any other numerology questions before we go into astrology? Claudia.
Yes, you told me my number is 9 for my birthday, meaning I'm entering the year 9.
Yes, so you might have missed this. Usually what tends to happen is that the energy moves closer to your birthday, and because you're October, you may not feel the shifts yet until middle of the year. So you might still be finishing out an 8-year, and then the 9 years sort of starts maybe mid-year as you get closer to October. So obviously these things aren't, on January 1st. So you're probably in that 8-year letting go to start the 9 year.
Oh, so 2023 is not the 9th year.
for you.
It
Yeah.
is? But only
Yes.
when it's my birthday.
I'm sorry?
So when you said that, okay, I'm confused. This is my 9th year, but not from January, but
Yes, I
from
said
October.
it before. When you rewatch it, you'll hear me again. The spirit world doesn't say January 1st,
Yeah.
let's turn the page, right? So
Mhm.
because you're doing cycles and it's rooted on your birthday, the closer you get to your birthday, the more you're going to start to feel the influence
I see.
of the year. So because you're a 9 year, but your birthday isn't until October, you may not start feeling a 9 until middle of the year. And you're going to see the same thing with the planets.
So
There's
the
a
things that
shift in energy.
you mentioned something about so the things that terminate in this year are terminated forever?
The cycle ends because now you start a new thought. Remember, the triangle is a thought that you started in the 3 year. In the 6 year, you chose how you were going to live that out, high consciousness or low consciousness. In the 9 year, you're completing that. But what I showed about the bridge is if you're in doubt, don't look back is the answer for a 9 year.
Okay, so
Detachment is the answer.
if my relationship ended, which it did, it ended on October of 2020, last year, before my birthday. And so far we are still separated. So most likely that's it.
That's choice.
Okay.
Everything in spirituality is choice. These are spiritual suggestions that are truths throughout any path. But I would never take away your free will and tell you, oh, you have that doesn't work that way. It's choice. It's choice and understanding that a 9 year, the best course of action, just historically, is to not look back, is to have an ending. And if you don't end it, something will be taken from you. But it goes back to the 3 year and the 6 year. Don't people, please, I cannot stress it enough. Do not piecemeal your life. Do not piecemeal your life. Everything you're going through now is related to previous things. Start finding your patterns in your cycles. If not, you're not owning your life. And I would never intentionally take anyone's free will and say, oh, that's the answer. No, I'm telling you that related to cyclical patterns, if something is ending in a 9 year, whether it was your choice or taken from you, that is intended for something else to come in. But find the pattern in this relationship when it started and match it up accordingly to what I'm teaching you. Take agency of your life. Okay.
Francis?
Yes.
In regards to the symbols, so you said 3, 6, 9 years are the triangle. Is that correct? Because then you also said the 1 and the 9 are circles.
Yes, because they're beginning. So you see how a circle is intact? You guys have seen the Urubos, the snake that eats its tail and makes a circle. Everyone has circles. All sacred geometry starts with circles. Circles represent intact energy. Nothing has happened. That's why it's like the beginning. Nothing has been planted. You haven't taken your little, dirt thingy and planted nothing. You're laying it out and you're looking at the foundation and you're thinking about what I'm going to do with it. Okay. So that's the 1. And then it comes full circle at a 9 in the sense that it wraps up. So the triangle is what creates your world. Your thoughts create your world. So in a 9 year, you're wrapping up what you thought in a 3, what you did in a 6, and now 9 ends that, which is also a circle. Does that make sense? It comes full circle.
Yes. Okay, yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Any other questions before we go into astrology? Okay. So we're going to do astrology. Obviously, I can't go through every planet and every person's chart of every sign. So we're going to do the main things that are happening to your sun sign. However, take out a piece of paper because I really, really want you to understand this. And if you have questions later, I'll answer them. But I will go through the major transits that are going in 2023 to your sun sign. I would assume that everybody knows their sun sign. Okay. So let's start with that. So Galileo said, the universe cannot be read until we have learned the language in which it's written. It is written in mathematical language, and the letters are triangles, circles, and other geometrical figures, without which it is impossible to comprehend a single word. So all of these ancient paths and texts are written in metaphor and symbol, like circle, triangles, and squares, right? So when you start to understand those, you understand what's going on. Now with astrology, we have circles, triangles, and squares, and we have planets. Those are other symbols. But that is the way to understand what is happening to you. When's your birthday, Karen? Okay, just let me know when your birthday is and then you'll know. I'll tell you. So that's what we're doing. We're layering every single spiritual path. You don't have to study astrology or numerology or the Enneagram or Kabbalah or Tarot. It's all saying the same thing. It's understand the cycles of your life. So now this is just another spiritual path that we are tapping into. Lisa, you're a Taurus. And Karen, you're a Virgo. Okay. So I'm going to teach you about the crosses today. So get a piece of paper. So astrology, like all other paths, show you a cycle to your life. The cycle, anything that is cyclical, has to do with your soul's purpose. Your soul's purpose is coming through you, whether you like it or not. So a lot of people are like, hey, this is my soul purpose, your soul's purpose. And then of course we do our talk and whatnot, and we get there. The soul's purpose will come through you. You do not have to do anything. That's why these numbers that are associated with circles 1 and 9 are to propel you to push that out. The ego is what wants to make your purpose is to sing, your purpose is to take care of plants. Okay, you can plant one plant and sing one song. Your ego is what wants you to be in a stadium of 50,000 people or own an arboretum. Okay, so your soul's purpose will be pushed out of you through these cycles. So that's the importance of numerology and of course astrology. What's important to know, what I really want you to understand today, is you have a cross to bear. Everything is squares or crosses or straight lines has to do with hard work, with the struggle. You did not come here to have a cake. That's not what the earthly world is about. So in astrology, you have to understand your cross so you can understand part of your purpose and why the same things keep showing up in your life over and over and over again. They work together. There is a cross to bear. All cycles are related to previous cycles. I will give you the connectors. And there is only one cross. There's only one story. That's it. One real problem. If you strip back all of your problems, they come back to that one cross to bear. Okay. And I'll tell you where to find that on your chart. All planets, all of the cyclical planets support the unfolding of your spiritual life and your earthly life. You have one thing in control, choice. Your free will determines how your earthly life will look. That's why all the years are animal years or earth years or body years, because we have to choose that our spiritual life and our earthly life correlate, that they're in congruence and that we're not at odds. Okay, so take out your paper because you need to write down your cross. And then I'm going to go through all of the planets for your cross so that you know what's going on in your life. Okay, so you only need your sun sign for this. There are 3 crosses in astrology. They're the basis of astrology. This is the crux of it. there's a cardinal cross, you see here. There's a fixed cross and there's a mutable cross. If anybody remembers the story of Jesus dying on the cross, he dies on the middle cross, that's the fixed cross, and the two thieves die on the cardinal and the mutable, because Jesus was an astrologer. So that's the meaning of those three crosses, the ones in astrology. Everything happens on a cross. It does not happen in a sign. Okay. Yes, there are things that are going to happen in Taurus this year and in Aries and in Leo, but it happens in a cross and you have different things going on. So you want to know your cross. And there's 4 signs on each cross, and it determines how you use your energy. It's linked to your soul's purpose, and it's linked to what you're here to learn. Okay. Cardinal cross. If you're an Aries, a Cancer, a Libra, or a Capricorn. So write those down. When I go through all of the planets, if I mention Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, it is affecting you somehow. The cardinal cross is about initiating change. It's also about learning to be satisfied. They want more, more, more. They struggle between the choice of themselves and others. And they're here to learn to control instinct, that desire and that instinct and that impulsivity. Everybody write that down. And you're going to get this, but while tonight happens, I just want you to have that on your paper. The fixed cross is Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. These signs are resistant to change. They need to learn to be more flexible. They tend to have a holding pattern. They struggle with attachment, but they're also here to build on things that already exists. So the cardinal people are beginning to initiate something new. These people already work on what's established and grow it from there. And they struggle with values, higher order values and lower order values. For instance, greed and lust versus integrity and humility. That's one of the struggles. If I can't let go and an attachment, then how am I going to choose a higher order value? And the mutable cross is Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. These people adapt to change very, very easily. Somewhat say to their detriment. So easy to switch, to adapt, to go on to the new thing, that they never really follow through or realize the repercussions of their actions. They can adapt so quickly that it can affect mental health. They need to maintain focus and precision. And they also struggle with high consciousness and low consciousness choices, but it's more about consciousness. In the fixed cross, it's more about things. This is more about thoughts. And escapism is a big issue here. Any questions? Did you write down the 4 signs on your cross? If it affects your sun sign, when I get to that slide, it's affecting all of that in your chart. If you're an amateur astrologer and you just know your sun, that's sufficient. But if you're a little bit more advanced in your studies, then you're going to want to see where you have all of this, because all of that's going to be affected. Okay? So there's different types of planets. There's inner planets and there's outer planets. We're going to focus primarily on the outer planets. Those are the ones that make the big changes. Okay, but I will briefly touch on the inner planets. The inner planets are the sun, the moon, Mercury, Mars, Venus, and we're going to talk about the nodes. These planets are established in your story in your first 9 years. Your first 9 years of numerology align with your first 9 years of these planets. They correlate. If you go back to your year you were born. 73, I was born. That's a 1 year. 74 is a 2 year. And you track that, you're going to track that you learned what you're now as an adult are fighting and battling and trying to change because you learned it in your first 9 years. So these things work together. This is what you learned. And now after 12, and we'll talk about that, you have to unlearn it. This is linked to prior karma. A lot of this is stuff you brought in from a previous lifetime, if you believe in that. And these are personal issues. The outer planets are Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. These planets rule larger cycles, usually 1 to 2 years. So you hear when someone's in grief, they get divorced, they're widowed, they're going through depression. 2 years is the structure to get back on your feet, to kind of process. It's intentional. These planets are set up that way so that it's about a 2-year cycle for you to kind of get out of your own way and learn something. And the planets are there to help you understand and change or work through whatever you learned in your earlier years. This is also the north node, which is your new karma. Your south node looks like a U, is your old karma. Every 9 years, like the numerology, you have a karmic swap. This year in particular, there's going to be 2 signs specifically that are going to be affected, and I'll share that in a minute. These planets are linked to ancestral karma, generational trauma, larger things in the system. And they're also linked to more universal things that are happening in politics and society and so forth. Okay, so these really create change. These planets begin your psyche from 12 and beyond. So this year starts at 12. This is like a 14 is one of the biggest cycles and so forth. Okay, so we'll go through those.
You mean like 12 years old?
Yes, 12 years old.
Sorry, I don't.
So 0 to 9 years old are the personal planets. The nodes swap every 9 years. So every 9 years in alignment with your numerology, you get your new nodes. They work together. That is part of that. The nodes are from Vedic astrology. So if you're really into GOTs or Vedic astrology, you'll see a lot of that. But even in Western astrology, we use the nodes. They're extremely karmic. And I'll tell you when the positive years versus the not so positive in a minute. And then from 12 years and beyond, these cycles kick in. In spirituality, we start becoming detached from our parents' karma. We begin at 12, and by 14, we have our own karmic baggage. So these outer planets are the planets that create change as you grow up. The inner planets are fine to know. Everyone wants to know about Mercury retrograde. I'm going to talk about it. But really what you want to know is where these planets are at all times, what cross they're on, especially Saturn. The cross you bear is Saturn. But if nothing else, know your cross. And what I'm telling you today is going to happen for the year. You're going to see it happens in all of those signs. Okay. The personal planets I'm going to touch on very briefly. It's not something that I pay attention to too much unless I'm giving like a one-on-one and there's specific questions. The larger outer planets are the ones that are really making the changes in your life. Those are the ones that are propelling. Any questions? Okay. So I'm going to talk about the inner planets briefly. They make small changes. They usually last about a few months or a few weeks, depending on the planet. Most of the personal planets are just a couple weeks in a sign through a house. Sometimes they go retrograde, which it appears to be going backward and it feels like you're stuck or stalled, and that's what we'll talk about. But really, they're just constantly reminding you of these things that you learned when you were young. It's the large outer planets that really propel the changes to the inner planets. They're related mainly to thoughts and desires that obviously we get when we're young. Mercury. Mercury is linked to low consciousness and the rational mind. It's how you think. Mercury goes retrograde 3 times a year. It goes retrograde in an element, not in a sign. The element of 2023 is Earth. So if you are an earth sign, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, it's mainly going to affect you. If you're a little bit more advanced in astrology, wherever you have Virgo, Capricorn, and Taurus, that's where Mercury will retrograde. The important thing about Mercury retrograde, and yes, you know, when you see on TikTok and Instagram, Mercury's in retrograde, oh my God, everybody has it somewhere. But really, the earth signs are the ones that are going to feel it the most, or wherever you have earth in your chart. And so if you know nothing, it's related to earth. The earth element is the square, is the body. So your time, your body, your food, your health, those are the things to start thinking about and making changes. So if you know nothing else, know that the earth has to do with the physical body and the square. Venus. Venus is about pleasures and desires. It usually goes retrograde about once a year. This year it's in Leo. If you are a fire sign, Leo, Aries, or Sagittarius, it will mostly affect you. It will also affect if you are on the fixed cross. So go back, if you're on the fixed cross, you've got Leo, Aquarius, Taurus, and Scorpio. It will also affect you. If nothing else, know that Venus is about money. Venus is about pleasures. And start restructuring perhaps how you are so pleasure, how you seek pleasure. The problem with pleasure is not that there's any problem with pleasure. Pleasure and joy is all part of life, is that we will seek pleasure for self-destruction. That's the question. And then Mars is actually retrograde until I think next week. And that happens. It depends, maybe once a year, maybe twice a year, depending on the year. After this, it's not going to happen, and it ends around March. It gets out of Gemini, but the retrograde only lasts for about another week, and it's about ego, personality, and will. So if you are on Gemini, Libra, or Aquarius, air signs, which is Gemini, that's affecting you. And if you're on the mutable cross, Gemini, Pisces, Sag, or Virgo. So it's something to think about, that you feel the brakes are on in your life and related to your will, your personality, your ego. Any questions on that? I'm not going to focus too much on inner planets because that's very personal, but the outer planets are the larger transits that affect us all.
Just a quick question. So just the last thing you were saying about Mars going retrograde, that would affect the people with on the mutable cross, but this year only. Is that correct?
Correct. And it's only till next week. We had it since a lot of last year. So we're coming out of it. I just didn't want to leave it unaddressed. The thing with retrograde, the point of retrograde is for you to stall. It's like something stops you. You can't make headway in that part of your chart so that you can refocus, recenter. And then when the retrograde goes stationary and then back to direct, you have a plan in action. So a lot of you may not know, but you've had Mars retrograde for several months. And Mars is a planet of desire and go-get and energy and creation. Like for all of us somewhere in our life that be stalled in that, we're starting a new year, it correlates, right? The new year starting, and a lot of us are going to be unstuck. And we're going to start off with some momentum around the 12th. But that will be the only Mars retrograde. Okay, now the outer planets. These are the ones that really make the difference. I'm going to tell you the meaning of each, and I put it on the slide. They move within 1 to 2 years in your chart. It's very important to understand. Jupiter goes around every 12 years, Saturn every 28, Uranus every 7, Neptune every 14, and Pluto every 12 to 24 years. That does not mean that you have Pluto for 24 years, you would be dead. Okay. In your particular life, the effect of it lasts about 2 years, 1 to 2. Okay. That's the range of struggle that we tolerate, right? Now, it doesn't mean that some people's charts don't lead into one after the other. But when we're talking about outer planet transits, we're talking about that time range. Okay. So I'm going to go through each one and I'm going to tell you where it is, where it's going, and what it means. I'm going to start with Pluto, which is the hardest and heaviest. Pluto is a planet of death and rebirth. It's related to a 1-9. You're ending and you're starting something, and it's going to be taken from you if you don't let it go. Pluto is not soft. It will end something. It will break something. So someone asked me about, I think it was Sony, about the symbolism. Oh no, Claudia, about your relationship. If it's related to Pluto, and the answer is don't look back, all of the myths related to Pluto are don't look back. That's why there are teachings and myths of many, many, many years that say don't look back. When you end a cycle, you end a cycle. That's where the guidance comes from, right? So Pluto in the chart is going to be that kind of energy, a 9-1, something's going to end so something new can start. It feels like hell. He rules the underworld. You meet your demons, you go down to the underworld. That's part of the transit. It's not a pretty sight. So right now, it's in Capricorn. It's been in Capricorn for 15 years. Capricorns in the Capricorn cross, which is the cardinal, could not tolerate life if for 15 years it was getting affected. It gets affected about every 2 years for one person, okay? So right now it's in Capricorn. Everyone on this cross has had it and will finish out, so thank your lucky stars, by May. So something in the last 15 years was Pluto, was an ending, was some sort of death, was some sort of shadow, was some sort of, you would describe it as hell or visiting the underworld. That ends in May, and it goes into Aquarius. So let me explain Pluto as a planet in general, and then you'll have to take it to your personal chart. Anytime a planet, especially a planet like Pluto, Uranus, Saturn, is entering a sign or leaving a sign, it is like a shock to the system. We're going to feel it generationally. We're feeling it, right? It's going into Aquarius. If anyone had a doubt that we're in the age of Aquarius, this seals the deal, okay? So those signs, even if they already passed their Pluto, they're going to feel a little jolt coming back, like a reminder. I taught you something, don't forget it. And everyone on this cross is going to get that. Even though you may not experience Pluto for another 5 years because of a transit in your chart is specific to you, when it switches over energetically into Aquarius, we're all going to feel something, but Aquarius mainly. Aquarius is going to feel absolutely something. And Leo, Taurus, and Scorpio. It benefits this shift Libra and Gemini, not the cross, just those two signs. Someone has a question. Okay, thanks, Therese. Any questions about Pluto? Claudia.
Yeah, so can you repeat briefly the relationship with the fixed cross beginning May 2023, because I'm a Scorpio?
You're going to get Pluto. Pluto is going to begin in your cross and will be there between 12 and 24 years. Now, I can't go through every single person and tell you your degree and when exactly the year.
No.
You will feel something. This is a very marked transit because it's starting in a new sign. So imagine 15 years you've been doing something one way, and all of a sudden the universe says, nope, we're not doing it Capricorn anymore. We're going to do it Aquarius. Everyone's going to feel it, but specifically the people on the fixed cross. So you will feel something around March, April, May as the energy starts to shift.
Okay, awesome.
Yes, Nicole, right? I know. Goodbye, Pluto. And Haley and Nicole with all the Cancer, like it's a heavy energy. I have a moon in Cancer that gave me cancer, literally breast cancer was Pluto. So it's a very important planet. So that's something later on, personally, like when we talk one-on-one, to look at when it specifically will affect you. But as a whole, somewhere in every person's chart, Aquarius, Pluto's moving into Aquarius, but these particular people are going to be very much affected from this transit. And this transit lasts between 12 to 24 years, depends on how many times it go retrograde. Our previous one lasted 50. Okay, this is when we really see larger order change in the world. So when we talk about shifts in politics, shifts societally, they're very much directed by Pluto. So we're going to see huge changes. Neptune.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
So, how do they benefit? You said there's benefit.
That's a great question. Sorry, I should have been more specific. In the same way that it's death and rebirth and it ends something, for Libra and Gemini, it gives you the power of regeneration. So from the phoenix, you will rise. It's a very, very nice, auspicious trine.
Francis, so you're saying like, because I'm Taurus, so I'm just thinking like, what do you mean it's going to affect, like in our life somehow it's going to make a big difference?
Yes, there's going to be some death rebirth cycle, some ending. So relate it back to the 1-9 in numerology. It's like a 1-9, something ends, something begins, but something's going to end. And unlike numerology, and I'm going to just speak to Claudia for a second, where you're making a choice, in Pluto, you don't get a choice. What dies, dies. It's dead. There's no coming back from. It's ashes. That's why it's the metaphor, from the ashes you rise. But that something goes to ash and dies with a Pluto. So in your particular chart, if you're a little bit more of an amateur astrologer, a little bit more advanced, find where you have these signs. If you have planets, cusps, things like that, that's going to tell you where you're going to have that. And Lisa, we can look at that on Thursday when we talk if you want.
Cool, thank you.
Okay. Neptune. Oh wait, someone has it. Oh, anybody?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Neptune. Neptune is the planet of escapism. So Neptune, and Nicole, you'll appreciate this. We've seen a lot of advancement with marijuana. We've seen a lot of advancement with mental health being on the forefront, obviously with COVID. We've seen so much about psychedelics. That's because Neptune has been in Pisces for 12 years. There's 2 years left. And it's going to change into Aries in 2025. But like I said, when a planet is going into a sign or leaving a sign, we feel a jolt. It's not yet, it's just 2023. But as we get closer to 2024, and by the time we get 2025, you're going to see a lot of things come out about perhaps mental health, schizophrenia, psychedelics, marijuana, false prophets, and spirituality. There's going to be a revelation. Okay, but until then, there's a lot of nothing's very clear. All of these things become very accepted and normalized. And when Neptune goes to Aries, that's going to change. There's going to be a shift. Right now, it's in Pisces, and it's affecting these 4 signs. It's in Pisces, and it's benefiting Cancer and Scorpio. What does that mean? For Cancers and Scorpios, it's benefiting you because you might have more connection with the transcendence, with intuition, a level of delusion that doesn't hurt you. This is a planet of delusion. You cannot see clearly. So these signs haven't been seen clearly necessarily. But again, it lasts 14 years and you did not be in delusion in 14 years. Maybe within that, you let go of your medication and you started using CBD and THC. Great, that's a shift. Maybe you found spirituality and tarot. That's a shift. So something of these themes were affected. Remember what I said early on. Every single thing is dual. Every number has a light and a shadow, and so does every planet. So getting closer to the divine consciousness or spirituality, transcendence, positive. Being in delusion and escapism and using perhaps psychedelics to hide pain rather than doing work, not so healthy. Okay, So until 2025, this cross is affected. Uranus. Uranus is sudden change. This goes both ways. There's going to be a sudden change that's positive, and there's going to be a sudden change that's a bit chaotic. Okay. It is in the fixed cross. It's in Taurus. So Lisa, I'd be curious to see where you have it. It's in Taurus until 2025. So this could be a 9 card. This could be something that immediately ends out of the blue that you didn't expect. This could be a 5 card that all of a sudden you win the lottery. It's that kind of change. You cannot prep, you cannot plan, it just comes. And with positive comes the shadow, right? There's always that duality. Right now it is benefiting Capricorn and Virgo because it's in Earth. And it will leave into Gemini in 2025. Okay, this one you want to know. If you want to know something about astrology in your life at all times, you want to know about Saturn. Saturn is the cross you bear. Okay, you get one thread, you get one problem. In this book called Living Enlightenment, it's like a Swami, and he writes little anecdotes. One of the stories is this guy runs into the ashram and says, Swami, I don't want my problems anymore. Give me someone else's problems. And he's like, oh, here, take any one of the garbage bags that I have. And he goes home with someone else's problems. The next day, Swami, give me back my problems. You think you don't like your problem. You know your problem. You know how it shows up. You go to bed with it. You have one problem woven through every single thing. And Saturn, if any doubt, go find Saturn in your chart. By house, by sign, that's your cross that you have to bear. You cannot let go of it until you die. It is called the karmic taskmaster. It's the part of your chart where you feel slighted, where you feel you got a bad hand, where you feel limited, where you feel restricted, where you feel, this is the number 4 card. All your entire life, you are in a number 4 card where you have Saturn. And you're going to be chipped and chipped and chipped and chipped until you fit through this little door here. And you learn your karmic lesson. These are related to the nodes also, which are karmic, which we'll get to. Right now, the Saturn is on the fixed cross until March. So these people are going to be relieved. And it enters my cross, specifically Pisces. The worst people off are going to be Pisces and Virgo. Okay, not the Gemini and Sagittarius are spared, but the worst of it will happen in the opposition, which is Virgo, and the sun sign of Pisces. And this starts in March, 2 years. So you're going to feel like a number 4 year. Go back to the slide of number 4, limit, restriction, building, construction, hard work. Oh my God, skinny cows, for 2 years. If you're on this cross. These people, so Lisa, you're gonna get a break.
Yeah.
What Pluto doesn't take, Saturn continues. They're in cahoots, all these planets. But you're gonna get a reprieve with Saturn off of your cross. So if I give you one suggestion in astrology, I don't care how amateur you are, just like I would say, calculate your number, and it takes all of 5 minutes, and you know what the energy is for the year and what to work on. Know where Saturn is, and it literally takes a Google search. Where is Saturn? And when you know it's on your cross, get ready, because something is coming. And the years it's not, oh, this is great. You'll always feel something in that house, but it won't be 2 years of constants. Right now, it's in Aquarius, right here.
Oh,
And it's moving into Pisces on March, I want to say the 8th or something like that. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
So how does this, so is this very different than a Saturn return though?
The Saturn return only happens every 28 to 30 years. A Saturn cycle happens every 7 years. But it's not always 7 years in your sign. So 7 years, 14, 21, 28. That's why there's 4 on the cross. That's why I tell you the cross is the most important thing you can know in astrology. If nothing else, know the crosses, or know at least your crosses and your signs on the cross, because anything that happens is affecting you somehow. You don't have to know the details, but you know that that's your cross. Prepare for something. So after it goes through the entire cross, 7 times 4 is 28. 28, 30 is your completion. But every 7 years, you will have a Saturn transit somewhere. I did a reading the other day. The girl had 3 Saturn transits, 3 different areas. Her sun, her moon, I think, or Saturn, all over the place. So you want to know what sun sign it's in so that you know what cross. It's going to benefit Saturn in Scorpio. What does that mean? You're going to get more structured. You're going to get more organized. Maybe you're going to manage your time, and maybe you're going to have consistency and follow through. Maybe you're going to put away the savings. Maybe you're going to buy the house that you wanted. It's going to help you, but you're not going to feel like it's limited. You're going to feel like it's success, that you're moving forward. Okay, 2 people raised their hands. Who has a question?
I just have a comment because I'm Scorpio and I'm saying finally. That's all.
Well, finally, but then you got Pluto coming. But this will benefit. And these planets all work together. We can't piecemeal. Remember, what we did prior is what we're collecting, so to speak. But yes, you're going to get a break from Saturn. And it's going to be a trine, so it's going to be nice. Any other question? And I have a little cheat sheet for every sign and the thing, so you'll have that so you can remember. Jupiter. So Jupiter is like a 5 card. I mean, a 5-year. Okay. Growth, the stems pushing through. You're getting some fat cows. You're getting some abundance and stuff. So there's a lot of growth. Remember what I told you about anything that has a loop. Anything that has a loop, like the number 5, like Jupiter, is about ascension and growth and moving forward. You're being propelled for your soul's journey no matter what, when you have 5-year or Jupiter, okay? Jupiter right now is in Aries. It leaves in May. This is a clincher. It benefits Aries. It does not benefit Libra, Cancer, and Capricorn. It benefits Leo and Sagittarius right now until May. Then it goes into Taurus in May. So it's going to be interesting. Taurian people are going to have Uranus. They're going to have Pluto. They're going to have the nodes. They're going to have Jupiter. It's going to be a very interesting story for the Taurians in the group, but anyone in the fixed cross. It'll be interesting to see how you live that out. There's gonna be a lot going on. And again, nothing's always good and bad. There's always something. Saturn's always somewhere. So right now, Aries is benefiting. Jupiter's benefiting Aries. But Libra, Cancer, and Capricorn are afflicted. That's called afflicted, and it's not so great. In May, it goes to Taurus. And then these signs, not so great. The trick is for what's not so great. It's not that it's not so great. It's that now you're reaping what you sowed 3 years and 6 years ago. Jupiter follows that same 3, 6, 9. So it's not accidental that a planet that follows 3, 6, 9, 12, and so forth is related to your thoughts and your ascension and your consciousness. I mean, it's just too perfect. So when I say not so great, it's that it might be the part of the cycle where you're struggling before you sprout. But for Taurus starting May and Aries ending in May, the benefit is still there. So Lisa, that aligns also with your leaving the job and stuff like that, right? You start to see that the 9 is the end of the cycle and Jupiter comes and so forth.
Thank you.
Yes, Haley. Okay, does Jupiter always work best for signs in the same element because of the trine aspect? Yes. Anything trine, triangle, When planets are in trine, yes, and specifically Jupiter. So because right now it's in Aries, fire signs, Sagittarius and Leo are going to have the benefit until May. And it goes into the fixed cross of Taurus, then earth signs, Capricorn and Virgo and Taurus are going to get the benefit. And the reason is that it's a 12-year cycle. Every 3 years, Jupiter is trine. These things layer. Every 6 years, it's opposition. Opposition is not the greatest. And then the 9 year, it's trine again. So you see, what you started in a 3 thought, in a 9, you collect. And so we start to understand, no matter what spiritual path we study, that they're all saying the same thing, that they're all guiding us the same way. Great question. Okay, nodes. The nodes are karmic cycles. We have 2 nodes. We have the north node and the south node. The nodes, I'm going to first tell you how they affect you personally, and you can do your math. And then I'm going to tell you what's coming. Every 9 years, so at 9, age 9, at 18, at 27, and so forth, you have a karmic exchange of the nodes. There is a karma. Something's ending, something's beginning. It's karmic. If you want to know what, go to your chart and find the sign. For instance, mine is Capricorn and Cancer. My themes are always going to be that cross I bear, Capricornian and Cancerian, because my nodes are karmic in those signs. That's one. Every time it's a 9, it's related to the 9 card in numerology, endings. Okay. I don't know how to explain this, so I'm just going to say if it's a 9, it's ending. If it's 18, it's growth. If it's 27, it's endings. If it's 36, it's growth. So opposite. There might be a name for that in math. I don't know it. Does everyone understand? A 9 is a south node, ending. An 18, which is another 9, is north node, growth, new beginnings. 27, ending. 36, growth. Does everyone understand that? That's for everyone in general. Your 9th birthday, your 18th birthday, your 27th birthday, that year, you have an exchange of nodes. You don't do anything. That's your karmic cycle. What comes in, what comes out. Is that clear?
Could you please repeat it?
Yes. Your 9 years, 9 birthday. So first start 9. I'm by no means a mathematician, so excuse my ignorance here. Hold on. I have a whole chapter in spiritual adulting on this, but I cannot learn these ages for my life by heart. Let me just get the calendar so I can be very clear. At 9 years old, I'm just going to use ages for a minute. At 9 years old, you get your south node. It's your first numerology cycle. 9 is the number of endings. Everyone get that? Something is taken, something ends. That's your first 9-year cycle. Your next 9-year cycle starts. It ends at 18. You're 18 years old, right? 9 plus 9. That age is guided by the north node. The north node is karmic positivity, future. Usually people go to college, go off on a gap year, do something, right? They leave home. The next 9 year is 27. That's another south node. That's another ending. That's another heavy year, karmic endings, but not by choice. Then another 9 years is 36. That's another doors to the future. You might get married, you might have kids, you might build a business. So we're constantly in a 9-year cycle, just like in numerology, except according to the nodes, something comes in and something comes out. Usually on south node years, 9, 27, and so forth, it's something that leaves you, that you don't want to let go of. Usually on 18, 36, and so forth, it's something new. Everybody has this. It follows the same numerological cycle. Any questions on that before we get to the astrology?
In the picture, which is the north and which is the south?
The north is the north, like an N, door to the future, and the south is like a cup, what you hold from the past. And Nicole, I turned 45, so there will be a karmic exchange to south node, but I'm moving. That's okay. You use the north and south node information. That's fine. So everybody has that. This is karmic. These are the flows of the numbers, and astrology supports it with the nodes. Okay? So if someone says it's a 9 year and I let go of this thing, but I was happy to do it, well, it could be just high consciousness, but it could also be it's a north node. You're sad to leave your parents, but you're so excited about your new life at college, right? So it doesn't weigh as heavily, that level of karma. Now, every 18 months, the nodes change sign. Now it's in Taurus, Scorpio, and until August. And this is not about the cross, this is just these signs. If you're in the Taurus, you have the north node. The doors of the future are open to you. Use them wisely. You will not get this again for a very long time. Scorpio, ending. It's south node. End what needs to end. If you're more advanced in astrology and your nodes happen to be in Taurus, Scorpio, and you know that, then you know that you have a karmic swap there too. But that's for more advanced. If not, just look at the sun sign. It's plenty. August of 23, the north node moves to Aries. So even though they lose Jupiter, they get the north node. Awesome year for Aries and fire signs in general. Libra gets the south node. So ending. But they have the trine of Pluto, so they're going to be propelled along. So you start to see that these things work in tandem. You're not always left in a ditch to die. There's always a bright light. There's always a helper. There's always something. Okay. Any questions? And now I'm going to kind of recap the sun stuff. Sun highlights. I'm going to do pros and cons. But I mean by pros is that the energy is just more auspicious. It's just more easy, like just helps you along. It's not a struggle. Okay. Aries is going to have Jupiter until May, and then north node in August. Awesome. Auspicious growth and new future. Taurus has Uranus. Again, it could be somewhat chaotic, but it could be a sudden change in your karma. And then the north node until August. So you really want to maximize the early part of the year. Gemini has Mars until March. Even though it goes direct, even though it's retrograde right now, it goes direct next week and then run with it. It's a great time for writing, for, getting things done, paper, communication, solving problems. It makes your mind really sharp. Cancers are going to have Saturn trine starting March for 2 years. So Saturn's going to help you get structured and limited and stuff, but in a positive way, in an easy way. Leo is going to have Jupiter until May. So you definitely want to maximize that because then you know Pluto's coming. Virgo, there's going to be a shift for Virgo around June because Jupiter goes to Taurus. So even though Saturn is going to be, like I told you, that was one of the worst signs for Saturn, during June, for a year, Jupiter is going to be there to soften it. So that's a positive. Libra, positive. Pluto begins in May, and that's going to be great. Things that need to end will end, but you're not going to struggle. Scorpio gets Saturn trine. That's great. Beginning in March for 2 years. Sagittarius gets Jupiter until May because it's trine with Aries. Capricorn, again, like Virgo, will get Jupiter for a whole year from June to June. So that's excellent. Aquarius is going to have Saturn and Mars until March. And Pisces will have Neptune until 2025. So again, this can go both ways. Neptune is a tricky because it has that nebulous delusional nature, but for spiritual growth and things like that, it's advantageous. Now I'm going to move to the cons. And again, by cons, I just mean struggles. It might feel hard. It might be like something's taken from you. Every corner feels like a limitation, but it's that inner struggle that creates the butterfly. Aries has Jupiter until May, and then they lose it. Taurus has Uranus, and again, that could go both ways. So I have it on both. Gemini has Saturn beginning March. Saturn goes into the mutable cross, and Gemini is one of those signs. For Gemini, look back what you started 7 years ago, because you're going to get revisited with that cycle. Cancer is going to have Jupiter until May, and it's square, so it doesn't benefit you. Leo, Pluto beginning in May, it's on the fixed cross, so that sort of jolt of Pluto going to Aquarius will affect you. Virgo is going to have an opposition of Saturn starting in March or May. That kind of shifts. And this is going to be difficult. This is from 14 years ago. So whatever happened or started 14 years ago, you're going to see the results, and something has to change. Libra will have Jupiter until May, not great because it's opposition. And then the South Node leaves in August. So you'll have the karmic shift, but then it's gone. Scorpio, you'll have Pluto beginning in May. Again, that jolt because it's moving into the fixed cross. The South Node until August. And then you lose that. Sagittarius starts Saturn in March, 7 years ago. Look and see what you started 7 years ago. Again, it's going to revisit. It's a theme. That's your karmic, the cross you bear. Capricorn has Jupiter until May in a square. And then it goes direct into Taurus. And I said on the other side, it benefits you. But until May, you have the struggle with Jupiter. Aquarius, Pluto beginning in May, every Aquarian, even if they're born later in the month, are going to feel something. And Pisces, all Pisces are going to start a new cycle beginning in March. Any questions? Sony, what do you mean by either ending or beginning? Okay, it said either ending or beginning, but I didn't know what that means. Claudia?
When you say beginning a new cycle, what do you mean?
In reference to?
You said Pisces.
Pisces is beginning a new cycle of Saturn. Saturn, I told you, is every 7 years. Every 7 years, Saturn goes to a cross. It's now entering the mutable cross. It's leaving the fixed cross. It's moving into the mutable cross. So Pisces and Virgo are the hardest hit, Gemini and Sag as well, but every 7 years. So I'm a Pisces. I'm starting a whole new cycle of Saturn because that's my sun sign. But Gemini, Sagittarius, and Virgo will also have to revisit from the past. So we couldn't tolerate in our earthly form 28 years of Saturn or 15 years of Pluto. So it breaks up. We get a little chocolate and roses, we get a little beating, right? Like the universe softens and then hardens and softens and hardens. And you start to see that with the patterns, that there's a lot of things going at once, but Saturn is really the one you want to track mainly. If anything else, that's the one you want to track. So that one starts in Pisces in March.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Francis, it's Lori. I have a quick question.
Yes.
I understand we do this analysis by looking at our sun signs. Is there any relevance to any of this for our ascendant or moon signs?
Yes, I was just going to address that.
Okay.
I only did the sun because obviously it's a lot of stuff. So a few things. All of that. That's why I wanted you to write down the signs on your cross. If your sun, your moon, or your ascendant are on that cross, that is also happening to that. So if you're amateur, look at the sun, don't stress. That's enough beginning. You know a little bit more than know your sun and your moon and your ascendant. And if you know a lot, go and find where you have all of those on every part of your chart. You might know your chart by heart. That's eventually the goal. Astrology, in my personal opinion, and I've studied pretty much close to most spiritual paths, is the best tool for self-development because it's you on a piece of paper. And so print out your chart, memorize your chart. That's a mandala of you, of your life, of how you're going to create the world. So if you're just starting, just start with your sun, then add the moon and the ascendant, and then start to add the other planets. If you have questions, just shoot me an email. But yes, I was just going to address that. So thank you, Lori. Sun, and then of course, the same thing to the moon and the same thing to the ascendant. Those are the big three that we want to consider. Any other questions? Okay. So I just want to take a moment, and the school has been growing and it's growing beautifully. And I thank you all for your support. I'm going to be doing a lot more of these monthly sort of things. If there's anything specific that you want me to cover, please just shoot me an email. I would love to have feedback. I'm also going to reinstate the podcast. So if anybody wants to be on the podcast, has a question, wants me to answer, the only commitment you have is that your voice will be recorded. I would love to have your questions to answer. But if there's something specific that you want me to cover in a workshop, I would be happy to hear what you want. Some of the things that are coming for this year are tarot and Kabbalah, a lot more on archetypes. I've gotten a lot of requests on archetypes. There's an energy healing certificate on how to clean and the meaning of the energy anatomy and so forth. Ancestral astrology is something that's coming up a lot in my life in terms of my own training and teaching. So I'm going to be doing a lot with ancestral astrology linked to healing generational trauma. And that's very personal on your chart if you're interested in that. The shaman is reinstated again. Archetypal astrology is still going. Consciousness coaching, Akashic records, inner child, and all the stuff that I've always offered. But we're building a lot. It's a 6-year for me. So I'm doing a lot of short, small programs. That's going to be my focus this year. So if there's something specific that you want me to cover, I am happy to create a workshop like tonight on it. Any questions before we go? No? Okay. So once this condenses, I'll send it to everybody. If anything, if you have a question, you weren't sure, just shoot me an email. I'm always happy to answer. A lot of you I see pretty regularly, so it's something we can always cover quickly in a session if there's something you want more detail on. And I just want to thank you all. Seriously, I'm allowed to live out my mission and purpose through all of you. And I really always appreciate the trust that you all give me for your spiritual guidance. So thank you.
Thank you, Francis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Francis.
Thank you. Goodbye.